Lando addresses McLaren's unfair treatment, Hamilton makes a surprising statement about Ferrari's performance, and George reveals a contract clause with Mercedes. Do consider subbing on the channel. Let's get into the latest F1 news. Have you ever wondered what it feels like to have your entire career, your dreams, your future, all hanging on one signature? Well, that's exactly where George Russell finds himself right now. The Mercedes driver has just entered one of the most uncertain chapters of his Formula One career. And today we're going to break down everything you need to know about Russell's future, his contract situation with Mercedes, and what it could mean not only for him, but for the entire Formula One grid. But before we dive in, let me ask you this. If you were in Russell's shoes, would you play it safe and stay loyal to Mercedes? Or would you take the risk of jumping to another team? Keep that question in the back of your mind, because by the end of this video, you might change your answer. George Russell joined Mercedes in 2022 as the young star who was supposed to carry the team into its next era. He was fast, consistent, and for many fans, the perfect balance between raw talent and calculated precision. In fact, he even outscored Lewis Hamilton in his first season with the team, a statement that made the entire paddock sit up and take notice. But now, as we move deeper into 2025, the story is different. Mercedes is no longer the unbeatable force it once was. The car has struggled for performance. Red Bull, McLaren, and Ferrari have all stepped up. And suddenly, Russell's long-term future with Mercedes is not as guaranteed as it once seemed. According to recent reports, Russell is out of contract at the end of 2025. And while Mercedes has hinted that they want to keep him, the delay in securing a new deal raises some big questions. Why hasn't it happened yet? What's holding things up? And could we actually see Russell in different colors in the near future? Here's where psychology comes in. People hate uncertainty. And right now, Russell's career is the perfect case study. He knows he has the talent to win races. He knows teams are watching. But without security, every race feels like an audition. Imagine the pressure of knowing that one mistake could change the course of your entire career. That's the weight Russell carries into every Grand Prix weekend. And Mercedes knows it too. The team is in the middle of a rebuild. With Lewis Hamilton leaving for Ferrari, the Silver Arrows are desperate to prove they can still fight at the top. That makes Russell their most important piece of the puzzle. He's not just another driver, he's the face of Mercedes' future. So why the delay? Why hasn't the contract been signed already? Some insiders believe it's all about leverage. Russell wants guarantees. Guarantees about the car, guarantees about Mercedes' commitment to winning, and yes, guarantees about his value. Because let's be honest, he knows he's not short on options. Let's pause here and think. What happens if Russell doesn't sign with Mercedes? This is where things get really interesting. Other teams are already circling. McLaren has a young, exciting lineup with Norris and Piastri. But if one of them were to leave in the future, Russell's name would immediately rise to the top of the list. Ferrari, of course, already has Hamilton and Leclerc. But stranger things have happened in Formula One. And then there's Red Bull, a team that always keeps its options open. Imagine for a second, George Russell in a Red Bull, partnered with Max Verstappen. The thought alone is enough to send shockwaves through the sport. Could it happen? Right now it feels unlikely. But in Formula One, doors can open quickly, and Russell knows that. Here's another psychological layer: timing. In F1, timing is everything. Drivers don't just sign contracts for money, they sign them for opportunity. Russell has to ask himself, is Mercedes really the team that will give me a championship-winning car in the next 3 to 5 years? Or should I hold out for a better chance somewhere else? This is a dilemma every driver faces at some point. Stay loyal and hope for the best, or gamble and chase glory. History tells us both paths are risky. Think of Fernando Alonso, incredibly talented, but often at the wrong place at the wrong time. And then think of Lewis Hamilton. The bold move to Mercedes in 2013 changed everything. Could Russell be facing his Hamilton moment right now? Let's circle back to the present. Russell recently won the Canadian Grand Prix, a reminder of just how good he is behind the wheel. That victory was more than just a trophy, it was a statement, a way of saying, don't forget about me, I'm still here, and I'm ready to fight. Fans loved it, the media loved it, and most importantly, potential teams took notice. Winning, after all, is the best bargaining chip in Formula One. Every result Russell achieves from now until his contract is decided becomes part of the negotiation table. So where does this leave us? Right now, Russell and Mercedes are locked in a high-stakes dance. Both sides want each other, but both also know the balance of power is fragile. Mercedes needs Russell to steady the ship after Hamilton's exit, and Russell needs Mercedes to give him the platform to fight for championships. But if either side hesitates too long, the entire situation could collapse. And that's what makes this story so fascinating. It's not just about a contract, it's about ambition, legacy, and the brutal truth that in Formula One, nothing is ever guaranteed. Let me leave you with this thought. George Russell is at a crossroads. On one path, he signs with Mercedes, stays loyal, and hopes the team can rise again. On the other path, he takes a risk, opens the door to other opportunities, and maybe, just maybe, finds himself in a car capable of taking him to the World Championship he's been chasing his whole life. Which path will he choose? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain, whatever decision Russell makes, it's going to shake up the Formula One world. And now, I want to hear from you. If you were George Russell, what would you do? Stay loyal to Mercedes, or take the gamble and try your luck elsewhere? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this debate is just getting started. What happens when one of the greatest drivers in Formula One history moves to Ferrari, but a key piece of the puzzle is missing? Today, we're diving into the story of Lewis Hamilton's new life at Ferrari and why insiders believe he may be missing the crucial figure that made Mercedes such a powerhouse. If you think this is just about a driver switching teams, think again. This goes right to the heart of what makes a championship-winning formula and what could hold Hamilton back. Let's start with the comparison everyone is making. At Mercedes, Hamilton didn't just have a fast car. He had James Allison, the technical director who, time and time again, orchestrated some of the most dominant machines Formula One has ever seen. The partnership between Allison's engineering brilliance and Hamilton's driving mastery was the foundation of Mercedes' turbo hybrid dynasty. Now contrast that with Ferrari. Insiders are already whispering that while Ferrari has passion, history, and a legendary badge, they don't yet have a James Allison equivalent in Hamilton's new environment. The Scuderia's technical structure is different, fragmented even, and while Frederic Vasseur is a strong leader, he isn't the technical mastermind Allison was during Mercedes' golden era. And this matters more than most casual fans realize. Formula One isn't just about having the best driver. It's about the synergy between the driver and the team, the communication between cockpit and factory, and the trust that when a driver gives feedback, the team can translate it into performance gains. Hamilton had that at Mercedes. Will he have it at Ferrari? Here's where psychology comes in. Championship-winning drivers need more than just raw speed. They need what sports psychologists call perceived control. That's the belief that their input directly shapes the outcome. At Mercedes, Hamilton could feel that control. He knew his feedback was heard, his instincts were backed up by engineers, and the car evolved in line with his style. That belief creates confidence, and confidence unlocks performance under pressure. At Ferrari, it's not so clear. The structure has historically been political, with layers of decision-making. Drivers like Alonso and Vettel experienced the frustration of giving feedback, only to feel it was lost in translation. If Hamilton senses that disconnect, it could undermine that vital sense of control. And without it, even the greatest talents lose an edge. But let's not write Ferrari off too quickly. There's another angle insiders are watching. Enrico Cardile, Ferrari's technical director, has been reshaping the team's aero philosophy. Some believe Ferrari's 2025 and 2026 projects could finally align with Hamilton's strengths: late braking stability, strong rear-end grip, and the ability to extract lap time on worn tires. If that happens, Hamilton might not need a James Allison clone. He might just need a structure that listens. Now here's the tension point. Mercedes is about to enter a post-Hamilton era with George Russell as their clear future leader. But Ferrari has Hamilton and Charles Leclerc under the same roof. That's not a simple driver pairing, that's a potential civil war. And without a strong technical figure to unify the camp, things can unravel quickly. Remember 2010, when Alonso and Massa clashed under Ferrari's political system? Or 2019, when Leclerc and Vettel collided both literally and figuratively? The same dynamics could resurface. The psychology of team harmony is another overlooked factor. At Mercedes, Hamilton had a structured hierarchy. He was the clear number one. Even Bottas, while fast, was cast in the supporting role. At Ferrari, Leclerc has been the chosen son for years. The Tifosi adore him, the engineers trust him. How does Hamilton, a 7-time world champion, fit into that ecosystem? If he feels sidelined or if Leclerc senses favoritism shifting, the cracks could show, and once they do, the Italian media will amplify every tremor. But let's zoom out to the big picture. Why do some say Hamilton is missing a key figure at Ferrari? It's not just about one engineer, it's about an ecosystem. Mercedes built a machine around Hamilton. Allison, Toto Wolff, Andy Cowell, even strategists like James Vowles. Ferrari doesn't have that same continuity. Instead, they have brilliance in bursts, but not always the cohesion that turns brilliance into dominance. And here's the cliffhanger. Will Hamilton be the catalyst that forces Ferrari to change? We've seen this movie before. Michael Schumacher arrived at Ferrari in 1996, and at first, he too lacked the structure that made him a champion at Benetton. But Schumacher brought with him Ross Brawn, Rory Byrne, and Jean Todt. Together, they rebuilt Ferrari into a dynasty. Could Hamilton play the same role, attracting talent, restructuring the culture, and becoming not just a driver, but a force of transformation? Insiders are split. Some argue Hamilton is nearing the twilight of his career and won't have the time Schumacher had to build a dynasty. Others say his star power, his relentless standards, and his global influence could accelerate the process. After all, Ferrari can lure top engineers simply by attaching Hamilton's name to their project. And that's where the story gets fascinating. If Ferrari can find their James Allison equivalent, whether it's Cardill stepping up or a big-name signing from elsewhere, then Hamilton's missing piece could be found. If not, we may witness one of the greatest drivers of all time caught in the same Ferrari trap that ensnared legends before him. So the question becomes, is Lewis Hamilton about to repeat history like Schumacher, rebuilding Ferrari into an empire, or will he echo Alonso and Vettel, leaving Maranello with unfulfilled potential? Formula One is a sport built on speed, precision, and strategy. But behind every great car, every record-breaking lap, and every world championship title lies one crucial figure, the designer. And when it comes to car design, there's one name that stands above the rest, Adrian Newey. For decades, Newey has been the mastermind behind some of the fastest and most dominant cars in Formula One history. From Williams in the 1990s to McLaren, and most famously with Red Bull Racing, his touch has defined eras of success. But now, whispers are growing louder about a new chapter. Could Adrian Newey really be heading to Aston Martin? And if so, what does that mean for Fernando Alonso, Lawrence Stroll's ambitious project, and the entire balance of power in Formula One? Stay with me, because what I'm about to break down could completely reshape the future of the sport. Let's start with the basics. Recently, Newey confirmed that he's in what he calls a learning phase after stepping back from his long and illustrious tenure at Red Bull. At 65 years old, you might expect someone to hang up the drafting pen and enjoy retirement. But this is Adrian Newey we're talking about. The man has been obsessed with aerodynamics since his teenage years. Retirement doesn't seem to be on his mind. Instead, he's been meeting with teams, listening to offers, and, importantly, paying close attention to Aston Martin. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Aston Martin has been aggressively building for the future, with billionaire Lawrence Stroll funding the project, a state-of-the-art factory, and big-name hires across the paddock. They've made it clear they don't just want to compete, they want to win. And for Fernando Alonso, who continues to defy age and expectations at 43, this could be the final chance at a championship push. Add Adrian Newey into that mix, and suddenly the dream becomes a very real possibility. But before we get carried away, let's analyze why this move makes sense from a psychological perspective. Humans are drawn to unfinished business. Alonso has been chasing his elusive third world title for over a decade. Newey, on the other hand, thrives on challenges. The thought of taking Aston Martin, a team still learning to walk among giants, and turning them into world champions, that's the kind of challenge that could ignite his passion all over again. And here's the kicker. Aston Martin isn't shy about wanting him. Reports suggest that Lawrence Stroll has been rolling out the red carpet, offering not just money, but creative freedom, resources, and the chance to lead a legacy-defining project. For someone like Newey, who values freedom and innovation above all else, that's far more enticing than just another paycheck. Now let's connect this to the fans. Why should we care? Because history shows us what happens when Adrian Newey gets involved. Think back to the dominance of Williams in the 90s, McLaren's legendary cars, or Red Bull's stranglehold on the sport in the 2000s and 10 and beyond. Wherever Newey goes, success tends to follow. So if he really does join Aston Martin, the entire competitive order of Formula One could be turned upside down. Mercedes, Ferrari, and even Red Bull would suddenly have a very real threat on their hands. But let's pause for a moment, because here's the psychological trick Formula One always plays on us: anticipation. The sport thrives on what-if scenarios. What if Alonso finally gets his third title? What if Aston Martin jumps from midfield hopefuls to championship contenders? What if Red Bull loses their golden touch without Newey? These open questions keep fans hooked, and right now, Aston Martin is perfectly playing that game. Of course, there are challenges. Newey has admitted he's in no rush. He's observing, thinking, and weighing his options carefully. Some suggest Ferrari has also been knocking on his door, offering the allure of Maranello's history and prestige. And let's not forget that Red Bull themselves might still try to lure him back into some form of consultancy role. In other words, Aston Martin isn't the only suitor in this race. But here's where Fernando Alonso becomes the X factor. Alonso has often spoken about his admiration for Newey. Imagine being Alonso, knowing that the final chapter of your career could be written in partnership with the greatest designer in Formula One history. That's not just motivation, it's destiny. The synergy between Alonso's relentless driving spirit and Newey's engineering genius could create one of the most iconic partnerships the sport has ever seen. Think about it. Formula One fans love stories of legends uniting. Schumacher with Ferrari, Senna with McLaren, Hamilton with Mercedes. Could Alonso with Aston Martin and Newey be the next great tale? The emotional pull here is massive, and it's something Aston Martin is undoubtedly aware of. Now let's talk timing. The 2026 regulations are looming, with sweeping changes to power units and aerodynamics. These resets in Formula One history often shuffle the deck. It's no coincidence that Aston Martin is trying to secure Newey now. Give him a couple of years to build the foundation, and by the time 2026 rolls around, they could be perfectly placed to strike. So, what happens next? Right now, all eyes are on Adrian Newey. Fans, teams, and even rivals are waiting to see where he lands. For Aston Martin, this is more than just signing a designer. It's about credibility. It's about proving that they're not just a midfield team with big dreams, but genuine championship contenders. And for Fernando Alonso, this could mean everything. Time is not on his side, but with the right car, the right team, and Adrian Newey in his corner, the impossible suddenly feels possible again. So, let me leave you with this thought. Formula One is a sport of moments. A single decision, a single hire can change the course of history. If Adrian Newey chooses Aston Martin, we might look back at this as the moment the balance of power shifted forever. Lewis Hamilton, 7-time world champion, the man who defined a generation of Formula One. But in 2025, something unusual happened. After leaving Mercedes for Ferrari, the dream quickly turned into one of the toughest challenges of his career. No podiums for 14 races, public frustration, even calling himself useless. And yet, instead of breaking, Hamilton has drawn what he calls a line in the sand. He says it's time to reset, to rediscover the love of racing. Today we're diving deep into that moment, what it means and why it matters, not just in Formula One, but in life. Imagine being at the absolute top of your game. You've won more races than anyone in history. You've tied Michael Schumacher's record of 7 world titles. And then you make a bold move. You leave Mercedes, the team that brought you so much success, to join Ferrari, the most iconic brand in Formula One, a team whose history drips with passion, glory, and expectation. The pressure is enormous. The eyes of the world are on you. And yet, the results don't come. Instead of victory laps, there's disappointment. Instead of celebration, there's criticism. For Hamilton, the thrill began to fade. This season, the cracks showed. After a string of tough weekends, Hamilton qualified 12th in Hungary and didn't score a podium. In a moment of raw frustration, he described himself as useless, even suggesting Ferrari should replace him. Words you don't expect from a legend. But here's the thing, those words didn't come from weakness. They came from honesty, from being human. And that honesty sets the stage for something powerful. Because right before the Dutch Grand Prix, Hamilton drew his line in the sand. He said, "We have to keep going even when it's difficult. We must remember why we're here, that we love what we do." He talked about the need to start enjoying himself again. This wasn't just about racing, it was about reclaiming joy, about shifting the focus from external pressure back to internal love. That's what makes this moment so fascinating. Psychologists often say that when motivation fades, the key is to reconnect with intrinsic joy, the love for the craft itself. For Hamilton, that joy was getting buried under Ferrari's massive expectations, the sponsorship obligations, the media noise, and the relentless scrutiny. Drawing a line in the sand was his way of saying, "Enough. I refuse to let this pressure steal my passion. I'm choosing to reset, to focus on fun again." And in doing so, he turned vulnerability into strength. Not everyone saw his earlier frustration as a weakness. George Russell, his former teammate, defended him, saying the comments came after an emotional day and don't define his ability. Russell pointed out Hamilton's sprint race win in China as proof that he still has what it takes. And he's right. One tough season doesn't erase 2 decades of excellence. But what it does do is test character. And that's exactly what we're seeing now. Because let's face it, Ferrari is not an easy place to be. The pressure is unlike anywhere else. The expectations of the fans, the media, the sponsors, it's relentless. Add to that the challenge of adapting after 12 years at Mercedes, and you can see why Hamilton described the experience as overwhelming. Even former drivers have claimed that much of Ferrari's staff didn't want him there in the first place, suggesting his move was commercial, not sporting. Whether or not that's true, those narratives weigh heavily on any athlete. And yet, despite the noise, Hamilton refuses to quit. He's reframing the story. Instead of focusing on the setbacks, he's choosing to focus on joy. That shift in perspective is powerful, because emotions drive performance. When we feel weighed down, our energy drops, our creativity fades. But when we reconnect with passion, everything changes. That's the psychology Hamilton is tapping into now. So why should this matter to us? Because what Hamilton is experiencing is universal. We've all faced moments where the joy disappears, where pressure replaces passion, where we feel useless. The lesson here is that sometimes you need to stop, draw a line in the sand, and reset. You need to remind yourself why you started, to strip away the noise and rediscover the fun. That's not weakness, that's strength, and that's how comebacks begin. This story also reminds us that vulnerability can be inspiring. Too often we expect our heroes to be flawless, but perfection doesn't inspire. Struggle does. When Hamilton admits he's not having fun, we connect with him. When he vows to fight back, we believe in him. That authenticity makes his journey more powerful than any statistic ever could. So where does Hamilton go from here? No one knows for sure. Maybe Ferrari finds the breakthrough they've been chasing. Maybe podiums return. Maybe he fights for that record-breaking 8th world title. Or maybe not. But what matters right now is the mindset. By drawing that line in the sand, Hamilton has already taken control of his story. He's chosen to define his season not by frustration, but by resilience. And that, in itself, is a victory. So what can you take from this? 3 things. First, emotional honesty breaks the spell. Don't be afraid to admit when you're struggling. Second, framing a setback as a pivot is a powerful tool. Draw your own line in the sand and choose how you'll move forward. Third, resilience is contagious. By fighting back, you inspire others to do the same. Lewis Hamilton's season with Ferrari may not be the fairy tale many expected, but maybe, just maybe, this chapter will become the most important of his career. Because it's in struggle that character is forged, and it's in moments like these that legends are truly defined.